First of all, I wish to thank each of the members of this task force and to recognise the chair of this session, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz. I'd also like to acknowledge the Australian representatives Josh Burns MP and Dave Sharma MP, who bring great intellect and sincerity to this task force. Anti-Semitism is an evil that has not only inflicted misery and destruction on millions of our people, it has brought ruin to the societies where anti-Semitism has been most intense. But this task force and the willingness of great nations represented here to confront anti-Semitism gives me immense hope. So I'll present briefly on the state of anti-Semitism in Australia before my colleagues examine the specific role of online. To be a Jew in Australia is a great blessing, but we're not immune in this country to the disturbing trends spread via social media, to the dark theories, to the movements that take hold throughout the world. In 2014, after Australia experienced its first case of jihadist terrorism, it was estimated that some 150 Australians had left the country to groups like ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra. Dozens of those fighters returned. We know from jihadist operations in Europe and from the assessments of authorities in Australia that the Jewish community remains a major target for jihadist attacks. The threat posed to Jewish targets around the world by Hezbollah is also ever present, which is why its listing as a terrorist organization is so important. In September this year, footage surfaced online of a prominent Islamic cleric in Australia, the leader of a group called Hizb ut-Tahrir, publicly calling for the beheading of those who recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and warning that the Jews will cry blood. He had earlier referred to the Jews as the hidden evil and called for jihad against the Jews. In the past 2 years, we've also seen disturbing trends in far-right neo-Nazi activity. Several avowed neo-Nazi groups emerged, engaging in online recruitment and dissemination of information, graffiti attacks, attempt to infiltrate a major Australian political party. Some of these groups appear to have disbanded, but this has only made it harder to research, track, and predict the activities of its members. And the fear is always that individuals associated with these groups or influenced by their propaganda carry out attacks independently. The murderer of Muslim worshippers in Christchurch, an Australian, had contact with far-right groups in this country, and the ideology that motivated him, a belief in an white genocide, the replacement of white culture and influence, is a constant theme prevalent in online far-right discourse in Australia, often framed as a plot devised and controlled by the Jews. A further aspect of anti-Semitism facing Australia is far more banal than jihadist attacks or far-right conspiracy theories, but it impacts the lives of many Jewish families on a daily basis. For many years, organizations like mine have received from parents of Jewish students suffering relentless anti-Semitic harassment and bullying. The issue first came to national and international attention last year with accounts of a 5-year-old boy in Melbourne being called Jewish vermin and a cockroach and being repeatedly taunted for being circumcised, to the point where he began to wet himself in class rather than go to the toilet. In another state school, a 12-year-old Jewish student was repeatedly subjected to anti-Semitic abuse, humiliation, and violent assaults by classmates. And these are not isolated incidents, they are merely the rare cases that become public. I have spoken with the parents of the 5-year-old boy and heard the impact that this abuse had on him and his family. And as a father and a Jew, I can feel their sorrow, their anguish, and their rage. And such incidents have revealed not only a gross failure of education, whereby students would treat their Jewish classmates in such ways, but a failure by schools to adequately train teachers to protect the victims and discipline those responsible. In most cases of anti-Semitic bullying and harassment, it is the Jewish students who leave the schools and not their tormentors, and this is unacceptable. There is no easy solution to these problems. We know from the immense corpus of anti-Semitic history that hatred of the Jews takes many forms and emanates from a variety of ideologies. But there are responses that can protect Jewish communities and protect our free societies. Adequately funding the security of Jewish institutions is critical. Monitoring and regulating online activity to disrupt recruitment, harassment, and propaganda is critical too. School education on Jewish peoplehood and the Holocaust, which can drive out the ignorance from which anti-Semitism stems. But all responses begin with leadership and the bipartisan resolve to act, which is why this task force is so important and why its esteemed members have our abiding admiration and support. Thank you very much.